Greetings. Today I am going to show you how I take a brisket and turn it into ground beef. I got the idea from Steve over at Serious Keto. I highly recommend checking out his videos. He is amazing. There's a few extra steps, though. I keep pointing people to his videos, but I actually do a few different steps than he does. So I thought I would show you guys what I do. Let's go. This first step is actually going to start the night before. You want to put all the parts involved with grinding the meat into your freezer. The colder they are, the better because your grinder is going to get warm. Here's the brisket. It is almost 16 pounds. I'm going to start cutting it up, but as you can see, I was blocking an area off because I don't have a whole lot of counter space. Certainly don't have enough where this brisket and me cutting it will all fit onto one space. So I want to try to save as much cleanup as possible. So I'm going to block certain areas using all of my cutting boards. I'm going to start by cutting this into slabs, and I'm going to trim some of the fat off to be used at a later time. Then from there, I'm going to cut them into smaller pieces that I know will be able to easily be fed through the grinder. Here we have two giant bowls full of the meat plus fat, and then a bowl that has the fat. All the fat's going to go into the freezer in a bag for, like I said, a future date. So just like you want all of the parts for the grinder to be cold, you also want the meat to be cold. So since my upstairs freezer is not that big, I'm going to put one bowl in the freezer and wait for 15 minutes. When that's nice and cold, I'm going to pull that out and I'm going to put the second bowl in. By the time I'm done grinding the first bowl, the second bowl will be nice and cold, and that'll be ready to go through too. While the first bowl was getting nice and cold, I prepped my area. I put cutting boards up behind because as you're grinding the meat, it splatters. So make sure you wear an apron, make sure you cover surfaces and stuff so that you don't have a lot of blood to clean up later. I have three different size grinding plates. So what I'm going to be starting with is the largest one. And then after I grind all the meat one time, I'm going to switch to the next size down. I don't want to use the smallest one because the smallest one actually tends to turn the meat into mush. I also have it set up with the bowl on my left-hand side because I'm right-handed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the meat through with my left hand. I will push it through with the right hand. I've got like the little plunger thing that's going to push the meat through the grinder. Also, I don't know how well you can see it, but underneath the square bowl on the right-hand side, I have a little pot that keeps that bowl elevated because I found that the closer the bowl is to catching the meat, the better, because otherwise the meat will sometimes fall out and around what area you're working in. So I like to keep it elevated and up closer to where the meat is falling. So now that I'm finished with the first grind, I'm going to swap out the grinding plate for the next size down. During this time, too, I want to remind you, you want to keep the bowl in the freezer while you're working on the other bowl. So I've got two bowls that I keep swapping out of the freezer just to make sure that it stays cold, that as I'm putting it through the grinder, it's going to be cold because I had it in the freezer. This next part is optional. This is just how I like to do it. I'll have the scale down and I'll be feeding the meat directly into a bag so that I can make sure that I'm getting 1 pound bags of meat. Now, again, you could just feed it through into another bowl and then you can weigh it out later. I don't know. To me this just seems easier, but I could be wrong. Totally optional, but I usually like to save the last pound of meat and make some fresh burgers because yeah, that's what I want. Last steps, I like to flatten out the bag and put a date on them so that I know how old these are because I do have other beef still in the freezer. And I lay them as flat as possible so that once they're frozen, I can like kind of stand them up and leave them in the freezer like that. But anyway, that is all. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.